I've worked primarily in two industries throughout my career, one being film and television, the other one being technology. And when I say technology, not that I have a background in technology, but working with founders that are building technology startups, primarily in the B2B SaaS world. Um, but I think, my history is I fell in love with movies, grew up in a small town called Amherstburg, Ontario, just outside of Windsor, Ontario. Massive Detroit Tigers fan. Um, Learned very quickly that I didn't have the skills to become a professional baseball player. So chased my dream of films and was very lucky that I had a aunt that was involved in the film industry. Was a costume designer, worked very heavily with David Cronenberg in the early days of his career, and so I was lucky enough to get on set and be in some movies. A little fun fact is I was in Goodwill Hunting as an extra in the background where Robin Williams is teaching at the community college. I'm one of the individuals in that class. Another fun fact is probably one of the last times I didn't have facial hair. Uh, so it was quite a while ago. But really chased that dream. And, you know, I'll come back to it, but mentorship being a very big focus of what Ellspark is in that part of my career. But unknowingly to me, what my aunt was doing for me was mentorship or showing me. I came from a town where very blue collar, everybody, primarily worked in connected to automotive or manufacturing or farming. And the movies felt like Mars. It didn't never possible. But here my aunt was making a living and doing very well and working with Hollywood stars and movies that were playing at the movie theater. So it also allowed my parents to see that that was a career, but it also let me know, hey, this is a path I could go to. And she took me under her wing and let me see it. And actually, one of the things for me is coming out of coming out of high school, not knowing exactly what I wanted. She actually let me come and stay with her in Toronto, and I worked as a volunteer on a bunch of film sets, got access, and started to understand what I want to do. And another, I guess, theme is technology shift. That was in the mid '90s, right as Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez and a lot of this independent movies were coming out, and it was very much a shift from traditional analog film, like film running 35 mil running through the camera, to digital. And digital was very much coming out as the advent of Final Cut, which was a groundbreaking program that Apple put out, and you weren't having to use a Steenback or $100,000 technology equipment like Avid. And I say that because I think right now we're going through that same scenario with AI, and very much a technology shift that is happening today. But I think fundamentally, and you can have any AI just like you could have any digital back then, but fundamentally it was the story. And to me, it's like, what is the product? Does the product actually have use? And so one of the themes that I'd love to cover is I think all industries are have some very similar pieces, and we put up walls to guard ourselves against other industries. And I know you've come from another industry into this one, um, so that is one of the other things. But going back to it, worked with my aunt, saw the traditional way of how you did it in the film industry was through that mentorship and working your way up. But there was this, what was happening where people were going out and making movies at a very different way in a very lower scale. And I referenced Robert Rodriguez with El Mariachi, if anyone has seen that. And it was made for $8,000. And he went and, went into like test labs and was that's how he funded it himself and just showed his talent, and then that broke him through. So I said, listen, I'm going to go back to university, be able to make some movies, because then I'll be able to direct and produce and write, rather than work my way up through the industry. And went and did that, and then coming out of university, I got a scholarship to the Vancouver Film School and was able to get out there. And another element is it's really the team. Who are you building yourself around with? And I met an individual at Vancouver Film School who was from Ottawa, and I still remember he called me. After we had graduated, we made a couple short films. They were playing in festivals. We were starting to get some traction. We were applying for grants. We were trying to get stuff together, and he called me one day and said, "Do you know who Terry Matthews is?" And I said, "No, never heard of him." And he said, "Well, he's a tech billionaire from the telecom industry in Ottawa, and his sons wanted us to get into movies." And I was like, "Well, that sounds like a really good thing to know." And lo and behold, Trevor was a great guy, Terry's youngest son. And over the course of the time, I ended up moving here. We made a couple short films. Terry was very much instrumental in saying, "You don't just build a project, you build a company. So what are you building?" And it's fascinating to see because this year marks just over 20 years for Brook Street Pictures, and they were just nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars with The Brutalist. And if you go back in history, the first movie we made was called Jack Brooks Monster Slayer, starring Robert Englund, who's Freddy Krueger. And a very different movie than what The Brutalist is, but it's part of that path and part of that story. And what happens with co-founders and founders is there were three of us, me and the other individual, kind of over time realized we didn't work well together, and I was given an opportunity to go work with Terry, and that was kind of my introduction into the tech world. Didn't really know it, but again, a lot of the film industry in Canada is made from government programs or government tax credits. And lo and behold, the technology sector, a lot of support and so I was able to kind of take some of the skill and adapt it as I was trying to determine what I was going to do. Worked with Terry for a couple of years until I got an opportunity to go work with a local company here that was in the video game industry. So I got exposed to producing a game for PlayStation Network and a lot of early iPad games and stuff like that, and really got exposed to then managing a tech team. And it was, kind of seeing the dark arts where I would ask them how long something would take. And if I didn't have that trust, I was like, someone could totally take advantage of me because I had no clue. So it was a matter about building that trust, negotiating, looking at timelines and all the rest of it. And then was there for a couple of years when the president at Wesley Clover had switched out. One of my other mentors, Paul Shirelli, had just been elected or been put in to be the president of Wesley Clover. And he recruited me to come back. And that was right around the same time Leo Lax was finishing up his fund, which was Skypoint Capital. And we were kind of thrown together to figure something out as the government was looking to do some more acceleration, which Terry had done through his Newbridge days with Leo. And we put together a proposal, and it was, I give a lot of credit for my mentorship I've had from Leo for the last 12 years, just with, listen, we're going to have astronomical goals, big, bold goals. When, our goals are, we're trying to build the next two Shopify's or the next two Newbridges, like, defining companies to come out of Canada. And we haven't achieved it yet, but we know our stated goal. And that is something that we really believe in. And then it's like, fast forward 12 years, and now I'm talking to you, Shane. So it's like, it's just mind boggling. Over 130 companies, different programs with the corporate side, and no 2 days are alike. So that was a long answer, and I left a lot of stuff there, but there you go.